Welcome back, everybody, to the Get Back Guys podcast. We're here. We're back. We got back.
Finally.
Yeah, I had last week technical difficulties. We'll see if Nick survives this week.
Should be surviving. Try to get it figured out. We should be good to go. I hope.
You
We'll
lagged
see.
as you said that. You lagged as you
Really?
said it. Yeah.
No. Oh no.
Yeah. You in a different
Well-
room? Looks like you're in a different room.
I am in a different room. The office was taken. Girlfriend's
enough.
working.
Well, hopefully it'll work. But hey, the NFL draft ended.
Yeah.
I missed most of the first round. An unfortunate bummer. I was doing my job.
Fair enough.
Showed up to the very end with the boys. I know Nick watched it with some friends of ours, some friends of the show. Justin's been on the show. Kev's been on the show. Zach's
Zach.
been on the show.
Yeah.
Good
Kyle.
group.
Watched it with the old co-host.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, it shocked me Kyle was even going to watch because he didn't have a pick till round 2. So, but
He was. I think he was just riding off the fact that he didn't have to be nervous.
fair
No chance
enough.
you can screw up a first round pick if you don't have one.
Fair enough. So we're just going to go through, I think, the first round, and then we'll just touch on teams as we kind of hit them here. And then maybe we'll just touch on some of the big news surrounding
Some of
one
the-
team in particular right now.
Might be a big news about a big time player.
Certain
quarterback.
absolute animal at QB.
Yeah. We'll see what's going on there.
So first round went to Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville Jaguars. Made sense. Thought it was going to happen. Jacksonville had an insane amount of draft picks, especially high. I listened. I was driving to see this guy recently graduated college. Shout
Thank
out
you.
to this man right here. I drove
you
to
go.
see him on Saturday. So on my way down, I drove after work. So the way down, I listened to the entire draft, and every single time, just Jacksonville. I was like, how many picks does Jacksonville actually
Yeah.
have? My God. But I think they slayed it. Trevor Lawrence is going to be an absolute animal. The few analysts who said that Trevor Lawrence wasn't going to go number 1 are idiots. They're idiots. Are you kidding me?
No.
Trevor Lawrence is an insane QB. It's just
Yeah, I'm
insane.
very hopeful that I, like most people, have been on Trevor Lawrence since his freshman year. I think he was definitely the best quarterback in this draft by a decent margin, actually.
Yeah.
And so I think he's probably the best, probably the best prospect we've seen in a long time, I think. And so I'm so excited to see what he does. And I never would have thought I'd be watching Jacksonville games for the longest time, but I'm really excited to see what they do.
Me
The
too.
only pick that I didn't love was the running back, the Clemson running back, I think. I think he's from Clemson, that they got at 25 in the first round. I would have much rather them go
Yep.
anywhere
Travis
else,
Etienne.
just because I'm not a big fan of running backs in the first round. And so I think that is the only pick that they kind of missed. And so I'd probably give their draft grade an A instead of an A plus, just because of, you have 2 first round picks. If they could have gotten another receiver, they could have, that impacts the game far more. They have James Robinson already, who's on an incredibly cheap deal. So that was a little odd to me. But other than that, I think they had a great draft, and I'm excited to watch them play. And I hope in a year or two they can really turn into maybe the best team in the AFC South. The
That'd be cool.
Titans. Yeah. I mean,
Cool to see
the
'em
future
elite.
of those other teams, it's really the Colts. Seem
Yeah.
like they have a good future, but they're who knows with Carson Wentz, they might get a great QB or
Who-
not. So
who knows? Not this guy.
Yeah.
Not this guy who preached it for a year. Jacksonville also, though, they took Walker Little in the second round with the 45th pick. And then with the 33rd pick, they snagged Tyson Campbell, who's a really good cornerback out of Georgia. So they had a pretty
that's
good draft.
pick.
They're going to be good. So number 2, New York Jets took Zach Wilson, quarterback out of BYU. I think we all expected that too. Zach Wilson
Yeah.
is going to be a pretty good QB. He does look like he's a Disney star, but he's going to be a good QB. I thought the Jets had a solid draft. I didn't necessarily swoon over it, but I didn't think it was.
Who'd they
one of the
go? Who was
worst.
their second first round pick? They traded back up.
I'm
The lineman,
gonna
I
find
think?
it here.
They also drafted Elijah Moore in the second round, which I love that.
They
pick.
traded up from, or they had Seattle's pick.
Mhm.
So they took Ajer Tucker, the guard out of USC. So yeah,
Yeah,
going and
I think they have a
getting the
decent
line
draft.
solid.
The big thing for them, yeah, is getting that line solid because their pass catchers, Denzel Mims, they got last year in the second round. He was one of my favorite receivers going into the draft because I was hopeful the Packers would take him in the first round. Obviously, that didn't happen. They signed Corey Davis, and then you had Elijah Moore, who was definitely a first round talent, and you could draft him at the beginning of the second round. That offense has some weapons. If they can put together an offensive line. Obviously, their defense is going to look up with their new coach. So I think it's a solid pick. I am not as in love with Zach Wilson as other people. He actually was my fourth quarterback. I actually like Trey Lance second, and then Justin Fields third, then Zach Wilson. But I think, as long as they can put a line behind him, which they couldn't do with Sam Darnold, then I think they could be looking up in a few years. That receiving core looks to be really, in about a year or two, that receiving core is going to be awesome, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So speaking of your boy Trey Lance, San Francisco 49ers are the big deal. They were so interested in Mac Jones.
Yeah,
we had
thank
bets
goodness.
going on it. They took Trey Lance, quarterback out of North Dakota State University. Sorry, gotta.
Well, I love that pick. I'm
Got
so
an
glad they
email.
didn't go Mac Jones. I thought they would go Trey Lance. He feels like the perfect kind of a guy to run their system. He can make all the throws. I think he is a type of quarterback, Kyle Shanahan, I think, can really meld him into the quarterback that he wants. So I love the pick of Trey Lance. Obviously, they gave up a lot to go get him. And so he better pan out, because if he doesn't, if he pans out and by next year he's a top upper echelon starter, at least in the top 15, then it's a really good move for them, and they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFL for a handful of years. If they miss, then their whole franchise is going to have to reset. So there is a lot of pressure on him because they gave up a lot to go get him. But I love the pick. I love Trey Lance. I think he's going to be awesome in their system. And so I'm just glad they didn't get Mac Jones.
Yeah, I like the pick of Trey Lance. I think this is a deep quarterback draft class. I mean, we thought Baker's class was going to be incredibly deep, and so far it looks like it was. Lamar, Baker, Josh Allen, Rosen didn't hit, but hey, if
Darnold hits, then
in that first round, and Darnold's jury's still
three
out
for
on
sure hits, one miss, and then the jury's still so far. Darnold's been a miss, but
this class has the potential to be the same. 5 quarterbacks taken the first round. They all have a chance
and
to do
higher
special. Yeah,
5 quarterbacks taken in the first top 15 versus Lamar was the last pick of that draft, so he was viewed far differently, and he's the best of the bunch, I think. But
Josh Allen, my guy. No, I like Lamar.
Yeah.
So then Atlanta Falcons, everybody thought, are they going to take a QB? Do they love Mac Jones? Do they go with Justin Fields? Who do they go with? Everybody had a peg for a QB, and they ended up taking Kyle Pitts, tight end out of Florida, arguably outside of Trevor Lawrence, the best player in the draft. Kid's 20 years old, an absolute animal, best receiver, great tight end. They need a tight end after Hooper left. That was we take the best player available pick. Loved it for the Falcons taking Kyle Pitts.
Me too.
Animal.
I mean, I think I'm still of the mindset that you can win with Matt Ryan. I still think Matt Ryan's a really good quarterback, and that offense is going to be electric next year because they also signed the running back, your boy from Carolina last year at running back, Mike Davis.
My boy.
Is that his name?
Who cares about Mike Davis?
Well,
brutally
your fantasy
average.
guy.
It's true. I picked him up in fantasy. All day.
But I think
out for me.
he's going to be better than what they've had at running back the last handful of years. But with Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, and Julio Jones, what's going to be interesting is to see how this division transitions, because who knows how long the Bucs are going to be good. Obviously, they're going to be really good next year, but in a year or two, and in 2 or 3 years, maybe the Bucs are going to fall off. The Saints are probably going to end up be rebuilding. I don't think they've drafted very well since 2016 when they just had the greatest draft that we've seen in a long time. And And so the Panthers still have a question mark at quarterback. So the Falcons could really be the top of the division in a year or two. And it'll be because that offense is dominant. And then if they can just get a few defensive pieces, that team can still be really good.
Got to figure
I
out
think
that
they
cap
have,
situation.
as long as if they stay committed to Julio, to Julio and Matt Ryan, I think they might have one more run in them to try to make a Super Bowl run in the next 3 years.
They got to figure out that cap if they're going to keep Julio. They got a messed up.
They got
cap
some moves to
situation.
make, but I think they got a chance.
Fifth pick, Cincinnati Bengals take Jamar Chase. I think everybody knew it. Reunite the boys, let them ball out. You got the fifth pick in the draft. Go get the best wide receiver, not named Kyle Pitts at tight end, and that's what they
love
did.
Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase, great pick.
A little nervous about their offensive line situation still. And so I think that's a big concern still for Bengals fans, because Joe Burrow's already gotten hurt once. We don't want, how you can't get hurt so many times early in your career, and it's going to be tough to bounce back. Really, Matt Stafford's the only one I feel like who's had a lot of bad injuries early. Well, besides Drew Brees, but you don't see it too often. So I like Jamar Chase. I thought he was definitely the best receiver in the draft. But
I guess it was late in his career.
Yeah, and it's a difference between like multiple little injuries all the time, where if you have an offensive line, you're just getting beat up all the time, versus kind of random injuries that happen. But yeah, I think the continuity there, they're building for a couple of years down the road, and he's a great piece for that.
He's a replacement for AJ Green. They're back to having a stud wide receiver.
Their receiving core. They also got T. Higgins last year, who was an underrated rookie, could have definitely been a first round pick. And so with Tyler Boyd, it's a very good receiving core.
Number 6, traded Miami Dolphins with Philly back a couple months ago. They took Jalen Waddle, which I think was a surprise to everybody. Everybody had Waddle pegged falling to us. Either him or Smith were the big possibilities, and they took him, I think, a little early for most people, but I think it makes sense. Go get a speedster, which Jalen Waddle is. Not that Devontae Smith is not, or Jamar Chase. Those guys got some speed to him, but I think they just looked at all the physicality he brings, Jalen Waddle, opposite a stud in his prime with Devontae Parker, and I think they chose a guy who they think can get the job done, and to add that deep, Deshaun Jackson type of threat opposite a big boy. You know what I mean? Like that's what they want. They want
their receiving
their big set
is awesome now, because they also added Will Fuller in the offseason.
If he can stay healthy.
So they've got 2 deep threats. Will Fuller is one of the best deep threats in the NFL.
They also have Mac Hollins, an absolute animal. Who played for Philly and didn't do a damn thing.
But they got Gesicki, and so that the offensive line's still a little bit of concern, and I think they definitely were hoping that either Pitts or Jamar Chase would be there at 6 when they ended up trading back, and then trading back up with you guys. But I think Waddle's a really solid pick. I think that they had an amazing draft. Even if Waddle wasn't, even though I had him below Smith, he's definitely one of the top 3 receivers in this draft. Give Tua some weapons. We'll see what Tua is. I still have full confidence in him. He just, once he gets a little bit stronger, kind of keeps recovering from a really bad hip injury. He's so smart. I think that they can really make it work there. He's played with Jalen Waddle too, so there's continuity there. That receiving core is going to be dangerous. The Dolphins, I think their entire draft, honestly, I think they've just got a lot of really good value. They also had a lot of draft picks. They
also at 18 took Jalen Phillips, the D end out of Miami, who's awesome. A good player. Though they drafted a
cornerback a couple rounds in, I believe, as well. Or a cornerback or safety. So
they took safety Javon Holland from Oregon, who's a stud with the 36 overall pick as well. And then with the Giants, they got Liam Eckenberg, offensive tackle out of Notre Dame, who I know people had pegged as a first round talent. So they're looking pretty good. 4 guys from 2 rounds. That's insane. That's a lot
And
of
all of
capital.
them could have been first round talents or borderline first round talents. And so they've improved the offensive weapons to being really solid there for them, and their defense is still going to be good with Brian Flores. That division is going to be really interesting, with who knows what the Patriots are going to do, because they had so much talent, but will it work out? And the Bills, will they regress a little bit after, I think, kind of having a mediocre draft this year? Will be pretty interesting.
So
Love the
following
Dolphins
that,
draft, though. That team's really good. If Tua pans out, they could be a surprise kind of AFC championship type of team,
scary
I
they
think.
don't think Tua will pan out because there's all these rumors that they really want to upgrade, but
Yeah, but
they hopefully
Aaron
have
Rodgers
confidence
is
in him. I thought he
available,
played all
so
right.
get the phone out.
So then at number 7, Detroit takes Penei Sewell. I don't know how you say it. Sorry for
Yeah,
butchering names. The tackle at Oregon, best tackle coming out of the draft, best lineman coming out of the draft, arguably
yeah,
one of the best players coming out of the draft. Detroit needs help everywhere,
everywhere.
and
Yeah,
they got help on the O line. That's a great pick
yeah.
for them.
I think for them, it's they need to see what they have in Jared Goff. Like, is he ever gonna get back to being the quarterback who led a team to a Super Bowl, or was on a team that went to the Super Bowl? Or is he not the guy? And I think just getting as much talent as they possibly can. And I mean, honestly, in a lot of drafts, there's no way he would have made it past 2. And so getting him at 7 is awesome for them. So that was an amazing pick.
So following that at number 8, the Panthers took J.C. Horn, arguably the best corner
Yeah.
in the draft out of South Carolina. People thought he'd fall to 12 with Philly. He did not fall out of the top 10. He's a stud. I thought that was a great pickup for Carolina, that if Sam can pan out, that roster's pretty good. They got receivers.
Yeah,
Got,
but they're betting a lot on Sam Darnold. And another thing is, you know, Justin Fields is right there. We're going to talk about it with I think the next pick as well. Justin
Denver.
Fields is right there. And, I know you gave up a lot to get Sam Darnold. I don't think they make that. I don't think they trade for Sam Darnold. If you told them 100% that Justin Fields is going to be on the board at 8, there's no way they would have traded for Sam Darnold, and they would have got Justin Fields. So I like the pick if Sam Darnold works out. If he doesn't, then it just seems like you could have potentially got Justin Fields, who I think is going to be a pretty good quarterback. Sadly,
it does depend too. The next pick is Denver, who took Patrick Surtain the second out of Alabama, the Surtain, however you say it, the cornerback.
Yeah.
I think these two, this is the exact same story. I think, and it also, do the corners pan out? If J.C. Horn or Patrick become Jalen Ramsey level good, and your quarterback is a little meh, but you end up getting some great production out of them, it's not, did you make the horrible decision? No, not necessarily. You just might have made a different decision. I do think both teams have decided, jury's out on Drew Lock, jury's out on Sam Darnold. We want to give him a real opportunity. Adam Gase has shown he can't coach. Drew Lock got 1 year in kind of a crazy carousel of wackiness that was going on in Denver.
And
injuries. They have a great roster. I mean, their wide receivers are incredible.
That's the thing, is they have one of the best rosters, arguably, in the NFL outside of the quarterback position. Probably a top 5 roster. That defense is good, and Surtain makes that defense. I mean, that defense is going to win a lot of games, and they're basically trying to recreate the Bears over there. And there's been a ton of rumors that they're going to end up really going after Aaron Rodgers, and if they get Aaron Rodgers, they're automatically one of the best teams in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And some people think that's why they didn't take Justin Fields. But I would like to see them take Justin Fields. But
they've been in the market for an instant upgrade, because we don't know. Tua, I think, showed enough where he is not necessarily. If you can get Aaron Rodgers, that's one thing. But like, Denver's been interested in Watson before all the legal stuff. They had a deal in place with Wentz, and Denver backed out. They clearly want a clear upgrade. And I think that they just decided that jury is out enough on these quarterbacks that they thought, we can roll with them another year, see what happens. They might take the step forward instead of going after a rookie. We think our roster's that good. And we can go get a rookie next year. But I like the move. I think you take the best player available at that point, and they might have had Patrick rated higher on their board than Justin Fields, and that's what they wanted.
They had a pretty good draft after that as well. So even if that pick even if Justin Fields turns out to be an absolute stud, and it's kind of a bummer that you didn't get him. I think the rest of the draft will make up for it, where they'll still be good, and
Yeah.
they're in a really tough division though, because
Russell
another team
Wilson's
in that
available too,
division.
though.
Well, that's true. That
Never
would be
know who they were
wild.
going for. Rumor was there was they had talked at one point a deal for, or no, never mind. I'm confusing stories, but anyway,
Yeah.
we'll move on to the pick that matters the most. Philly trades
Eagles.
back to 12. Then they make a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
They trade with the Dallas Cowboys. I know Howie Roseman said he thought more quarterbacks would be taken before he made his moves, and it was a bit of a surprise. I love the pick of Devontae Smith. Is it Devontae, right? You pronounce Devontae.
Yeah.
Yep.
Devonta Smith.
Devonta Smith. He's an animal. All I heard before the draft was Devontae Smith is a pure receiver, elite receiver, arguably is probably the best of the three. I mean, these three, it feels like it's just been back and forth. Just maybe an asterisk, slightly undersized, probably not a problem from everybody until we draft him. The second we draft him, the complete narrative turned into, can he size? Seems like mostly positive, home run hit, but size. I've watched so much of his highlights. He's 5'10". Like, I watched him play and I legitimately was like, he's 5'10". No way. Because he plays like he's 6'8". He is an animal. I mean, some of those catches, I love the speed. I love the pick. I was happy with any of the receivers if we were going to take any of those three. I love this pick. I'm fine. We went receiver back to back. Jury's still out on Reagor, and if it works, we've got two elite wide receivers. And so I am all for it. I think the play to not take a QB is fine. I think they clearly didn't have Justin Fields. I think they had Smith higher on their board, but I also think they sat back and said, do we really like Fields or Mac Jones more than we liked Jalen Hurts, who we took in the second round last year? Do we really like him more than what we liked last year? And I think they said, no, going best player available. We're going to go get Smith. Jumped up for him. I think they were very scared people were going to snipe him. And I think the corners going was a big factor. I think we definitely had Horn over Smith on the board on pure talent. And I think we would have taken him, but because both of them went boom, boom, and Howie said, oh crap, our last guy probably in the top 8 or the highest guy up in the top 10 on our board about to be taken. Let's trade up and go get him. We gave away the pick we got from Miami in the 3rd round for this trade up. I'm completely okay with it because we still got their first pick next year. And we have a potential of having 3 first-round draft picks next year if Hurts doesn't work out, go trade for Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Maybe.
But we have the capital, and honestly, I hope Hurts pans out and there is no big trade and we just go get stud is what I hope.
Well, yeah, if Hurts could, I mean, he played pretty well in the few games that he had.
He played
especially for what talent he had around him, and we saw what happened with Wentz, and the talent that he had around him was so hard.
Well, if you go back to those games, what on earth just happened to the old camera? If you go back to those games, Hurts jumps into that Packer game. Right? It was against you guys.
Yeah.
It kind of sparks the offense. A lot of movement on his legs. It was a lot of him just moving around. And as the weeks went on and he was trying to be more fundamental, he started getting absolutely obliterated and he wasn't playing as well. And it was because, and I remember I said it on this show that, people were blaming Wentz for everything, when in reality, the second all the same problems that were happening for Wentz were happening for Hurts, all of a sudden Hurts is playing horrible. He played horrible a couple games. He did not look good. But he was a bigger spark. I think the jury is still out on him. I think he could be an absolute stud. He's only played a couple for a reason. Games. 4 games. I mean, yeah, the jury is clearly still out on him. I love the move Philly did, trading up. We still had 11 picks in the draft. We ended up drafting 9 with a few trades here and there. Got capital more for next year. We already have the high next year, which is 10 picks. 3 of those, or 2 are in the first. 1 is a projected second right now. That will become a first if Wentz plays 70% of his snaps, 75% of his snaps, which he better. So I loved it. I actually thought we had a really good draft. We took the offensive lineman. I want to get his name here. In the second round, I think I passed it here. We took Landon Dickerson, the OC at Alabama, who's had ACL injury. He would have been a first-round talent if he wasn't currently rehabbing. I do this every year with you, Howie. I do this dance with you every year. We did it with Josh Sweat like 3 years ago, where he was supposed to be a first-round talent until he tore his ACL and he dropped to the fourth round. And now he's starting to have production 4 years later. And if he can get back, he can be a starter. He could be our future center to take over for Jason Kelce. And I'm all okay with that, but he's got to get to it. I think we took some risks and some safe home runs in our draft this year. In the third round, we took Milton Williams, the D tackle at Louisiana Tech. We took We took 3 D linemen, 4 total linemen. Took Kenneth Gainwell, the running back, who I actually really like. I think he's a pretty good player, good receiving back. I think we're going to just copy the Colts 3-way running back system next year with Miles as the top, Jordan Howard coming in, and then Gainwell. So I really liked it. We got a couple guys that are, projected to be pretty good corners who could come in and handle the cornerback position, I hope. So we got a lot of talent. I think the draft is a good draft. I'd give ourselves a B+ myself. I think it's
that was kind of what I was thinking.
B+ potential of an A, depending on how everybody hits.
I think you really nailed the first round. I love Devontae Smith. He's awesome. And the only reason he didn't go in like the top 5 is because of his size. But
Jalen
if
Waddle's,
that's the reason you're not, one of the top people in the draft, he's still an immense talent. So super hyped about that for you guys. And I think that'll give him and Jalen Reagor have a chance to give Hurts. Let's see what he has. And you guys are really in next year, it's kind of where you're going to see the direction of the team go, while this year it's just kind of getting talent. Even if you did take a couple of potential risks with your other picks, and we'll see how those pan out. But overall, I think you had a solid draft.
Yeah, I think we did too. I do want to point out real quick, we'll move on to the Bears here in a second, but I hired a head coach whose specialty has been receivers his whole career. It just is fundamentals is his whole thing, with Nick Sirianni. And I think they said, hey, we love Smith. Yes, he doesn't necessarily have the size, but guess who does? JJ Arcega-Whiteside and Travis Fulgham. Guess what? We just brought in a coach whose what his specialty is. It's wide receivers. Let's give him a chance. Let's go get a clear-cut stud, not care about the size, see if maybe we can fix JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and see. The jury is out on Fulgham. The guy was dominant when he was actually being targeted, and then Alshon Jeffrey started getting healthy and he stopped playing him. It was just snaps. Doug just stopped playing him. So jury is still out. I love Nick as a head coach. I think he's been doing a great job. Every interview I see, I actually fall in love with him more. He just knows the game. So I love this pick. I think it was great, but we can move on. The Chicago Bears. The NFC East, not about taking picks. We're only about trading around. Yeah. Giants traded back. Bears traded up pretty high. And they take Justin Fields at Ohio State. And Zach, friend of the show, big Bears fan, been on the show, lost it. He's absolutely ecstatic. I was just talking to games with him the other day, and he's just losing it. Yeah, Justin Fields, a great talent. It's going to bring he's better than Mitch ever was coming out. You look at those college reports, they've got Justin Fields got to be light years better, but Justin Fields could potentially be considered the steal of the draft for dropping this far.
Oh yeah. If he has this draft is loaded with quarterbacks, and he has a chance to, I don't think he'll be better than Trevor Lawrence, but he has a chance to at least be the second best quarterback in a draft where 3 quarterbacks went in the first 3 picks. It's amazing for them. I don't think, it was always kind of a long shot when all of a sudden, when the 49ers first traded up, it was like, oh, they're just going to get Justin Fields. That's exactly who they're going to get. Most people have him as their third guy behind Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. And I had him at third too, just had Zach Wilson lower. But once we started hearing about Mac Jones maybe going at 3, or Trey Lance, it was like, man, maybe Justin Fields will fall. And I'm surprised he fell this far. And the Panthers and Broncos weren't willing to take, or even Falcons weren't willing to try it on him. But it's huge for the Bears, because the Bears go from, if they don't get Justin Fields, I doubt they go get Mac Jones, who I'm not nearly as high on. And all of a sudden, they're in a terrible position moving forward where they have a good enough roster defensively where they're never going to be in the top 5, right? They're going to win at minimum 6 games with the division they're in with the pack. Well, they're probably not going to beat the Packers. But with beating the Lions, Vikings, they're probably at least going to win 6 to 8 games because their defense is so good.
Yeah.
But now they somehow got a quarterback that dropped. And so their franchise went from in a really difficult position to a really good position where if he hits and Justin Fields is awesome, they're going to have a chance, especially with the Packers. Who knows what's going to happen with them after this year or in the next few weeks if Aaron Rodgers goes, where they could really become the powerhouse of the division. It pains me to say that, and I still don't know if it's 100% likely that it happens, but it's a far cry from where they were a couple weeks ago, from feeling like they're going to waste the potential of a defense. I mean, they gave up 2 first-round picks to get Khalil Mack to just get bounced in the first round 2 years in 2 out of 3 years. So this is a huge pick for them. The rest of the draft was okay, I think, for them, but the Justin Fields pick does it for them.
Huge.
And, yeah.
Huge. We do got to rattle through faster, I think, because we are running out of time. We got to make sure we got to get to that. We got to get to the pack.
Oh boy.
So following that, Dallas Cowboys took the Phillies pick at 12. They took Micah Parsons, linebacker out of Penn State. Really like him. Dallas has a history of taking great linebackers who never get healthy. I hope Micah stays healthy because I really like him as a player. I really wanted Philly to go after him.
Yeah, I mean, they need defense too, and he's a great talent for sure.
Chargers took Rashawn Slater, O-lineman out of Northwestern. Just shore up that line for Herbie Sherby, and you're good to go.
They dominated this draft low key.
Yeah,
they got Asante Samuel in the second round, super late.
Yeah,
and they're one of my 3 draft winners. Them and the Dolphins and another team that we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, they killed this draft, and their roster with Justin Herbert, their roster is slightly worse than the Broncos, but because they've got Justin Herbert, they're probably that second best team in that division. And it's going to be really interesting to see in a year or two if the Chiefs start, losing some talent because of that contract to Patty's before Justin Herbert gets his contract, if they actually win the division a year or two. Because I think that could potentially happen because they killed this draft, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. Following that, we have the Jets. We went over them, taking Vertucker, and then the New England Patriots, 15. Trade
Another
up.
Good draft.
And they go snag Mac Jones, quarterback at Alabama.
No, I think they stood pat at 15.
Oh, I guess you're right. They did.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of Patriot fans hate that they took a quarterback.
Really? I think it makes a lot of sense.
But it makes sense. They need to. Cam Newton
I don't love
just
Mac
not
Jones.
The answer.
I'm not as high on him as a lot of people. I think 15 might be a little high for him. But, Bill Belichick might be able to get something out of him. They still are a little shy on the receiver front. They just have an okay receiving core, but they're going to be a good team next year. They got a great coach. They added a lot of talent. But it's pretty interesting to see who's going to start between chubby Mac Jones and shredded Cam Newton next year.
It'll be interesting. I hate the Patriots. All right. Arizona Cardinals took Zaven Collins, linebacker out of Tulsa. You get back I just lost his name. I just had it. Their linebacker they drafted last year.
Isaiah Simmons.
He'll come back. He'll be a stud. You got J.J. Watt there to mentor these young guys and just be a leader in the locker room. The Cardinals roster still just looks absolutely stacked. I hope they figure it out this year because we thought they were going to neck last year and they didn't. But I like that pick.
They had a few stumbles last year that they should have been in the playoffs.
They had some close games,
no doubt. They lost some close games, and they also won a couple. The Hail Mary game. They're really interesting. They are in just such a tough division that I feel bad for them because if they were in an easier division, they would no doubt be a double-digit win team next year.
Don't retire, Larry. Come back out. Come back.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Then we got the Raiders. They took Alex Leatherwood, OT out of Alabama. Yeah, they didn't seem to have a great one, but I like Alex. He's good.
He shouldn't have been a first-round pick, I don't think.
Really?
Yeah,
you know more
I
than
don't think a
me.
lot of people had him graded that highly. He may work out, but I think there was more talent on the board when they went to pick. I think they had one of the worst drafts. And Mike Mayock, we were so hyped about kind of getting
I
that
do like
job, at
Mike
least.
Mayock.
I love Mike Mayock, but they have done I feel like a horrific job of drafting. They just kind of zone in on guys that are way off in value, go after them. Their team's kind of a mess. I feel like, that they're only going to be able to be kept up so high in that division that's getting so much better with the Broncos and Chargers, where they might be having a top 10 pick next year.
We'll see. Dolphins, we talked about at 18. Washington football team took Jamian Davis, linebacker out of Kentucky. Thought that was fine.
Yeah, didn't
They're
love
all
it,
taking
but
linebackers in my division. That's fine.
yeah,
We'll run right by
yeah,
them.
exactly. Yeah, I didn't love that pick, but I didn't hate it either because they were kind of in an odd spot by making the playoffs last year, even though they weren't that good of a team.
Yeah. Following that, the Giants finally get to their pick that the Bears had at 20. They take Kadarius Toney, the wide receiver out of Florida. Tooney, my bad.
You're good.
They need wide receiver help.
Yeah, I mean,
they're solid, but they need help for
Daniel Jones is going to be able to prove it, just like Tua, because they got Galladay and they got Tooney, and he's going to be. And I think he's a pretty solid guy.
When Saquon comes back, it'll be huge for them, who just did nothing but let me down last year. I got all the way to the championship game in fantasy. Shouldn't have been there. I would have dominated if I had Saquon Barkley as my first round pick all year. Way to let me down.
Yeah, but I think that was a decent pick for them, and they traded back, still got some good value, and got some extra picks from the Bears, an extra first round pick next year. So if Daniel Jones ends up being bad, they'll know and they'll be able to move up next year. If they see that he's good, they can put around maybe another offensive lineman and go after that defense, which was pretty darn good last year. For how bad of a team they were. So offense makes sense. I think it's a good call.
Yeah, I thought it worked. Colts took Kwity Paye out of Michigan, D end. Good pick. They need help on the defense. I think their offense is pretty solid. Best O-line in football last year. They got Wentz to be back there now. I think that
they do defense, still feel like they need a receiver. I could have seen them go after Bateman or someone like that as well, because they do seem a little like they got Michael Pittman last year. But I don't know if he's necessarily a number one guy. Or
didn't they take a receiver later?
I don't know.
I think they did.
They get a round 2 receiver. They get Marshall.
They did not. They took a linebacker in round 2.
Oh.
So I will say this though,
much later, but I think that's kind of their one position where if they get a dominant number one type of a guy, I mean, that offense and that whole team's gonna be really good.
Well, the biggest thing though is they took a quarterback in the 6th round, and I'm not sure. I mean, Wentz has got to constantly look over his shoulder. He's got guys coming after him in the 6th round. These guys are absolute animals that come out of the 6th round. So Wentz should be scared. He should be terrified. He's not that great when he's got an amazing backup behind him, which he does now for a QB I don't even know the name of. Just throwing some shade. Following that, Titans took Caleb Fairley, CB out of Virginia Tech. They need help on the CB side. He's a good corner.
Lost a couple of cornerbacks in free agency, Malcolm Butler and the guy they traded for.
That great. I don't think they wanted him.
Well, I think it's a decent. He's okay. You need depth at that position, and so I think it's a good pick, even though he has some concern. Maybe Newsome would have been better over him, but if he comes back healthy, it's a slam dunk.
Then the Vikings took Christian Darsaw, offensive tackle, just trying to protect Kirk Cousins from whatever the heck's going on there.
Yeah, I think it's good. Did you hear that there were rumors that they were almost going to trade up for Justin Fields? They almost executed a trade for Justin Fields. So they're looking to move off of Kirk. I think we've heard a lot about that. I don't think they drafted a quarterback. Did they draft a quarterback in the later rounds?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so, but they might have. Who did Kellen Mond?
I don't know.
Let me look it up because it might have been.
Look it up. I'm gonna move on.
But other than that, yeah, just fine pick. They're kind of in an. Oh yeah, so they drafted Kellen Mond in the 3rd round, I think. So they might be moving on from Kirk. I mean, he has a lot of upside as a 3rd round pick. Could be kind of a Dak Prescott kind of a guy. They I think Kirk, like we thought, is kind of that,
Jury's not out on
they,
him. He
yeah,
has a ceiling. He's had a ceiling for a long time, which was better than what they had, but
yeah.
they can go
And,
higher.
and they thought, I mean, they made it to the conference championship game with Case Keenum. They were like, well, maybe if we just get slightly better at the position.
Yeah.
And they did get slightly better.
And it was
but
his
then
best option, I think, that year for
the
them.
rest of their team, their whole defense regressed. And so they've kind of been in an odd spot for the last couple of years.
Yeah. So then Pittsburgh took Najee Harris, running back at Alabama. I'm kind of with you with running backs earlier in the draft, but late first round, I'm usually okay when people take running backs.
I don't really like it for them. I think they have, and I know
have probably
Justin,
bigger needs.
Who's a big, that's exactly who he wanted them to draft. That is a need of theirs, but also their offensive line needs to get a lot better. Their defense has a lot of holes too. And it's a team that really overachieved last year in the first 11 games. They've been 1-5 since they were 11-0. That is not good. Big Ben is not getting better. And so, yes, they added a running back. How effective is he going to be if their line can't block? I don't know. So I didn't actually really love the Steelers draft, even though a lot of people really liked Harris to them. And I think he'll be a fine running back, but I think their offensive line needed more work.
Sure. So we talked about Jacksonville at 26. Cleveland took Greg Newsome at cornerback at 26, excuse me. Steve. Great pick for them. Rich just get richer. That roster looks absolutely I think, fantastic.
So they were my third winner of the draft is the Browns. And I think they are the second best team in the NFC because they got so much better at position of need in the AFC. Yes, excuse me. Newsome, he was, I think, an amazing pick. I think he could have gone 5 or 6 picks higher for sure. And so getting him there, I was kind of hoping the Packers would get him. Obviously they didn't. But yeah, love that pick for the Browns. And the Browns are that defense would be pretty darn good next year. Good. And as long as Baker just keeps improving a little bit or just stays really good, and if they can really gel with Odell coming back, that team could be better than the Chiefs next year, as long as they get close to solid play from Baker.
All right, I'm gonna rattle through quickly the last few, and then we'll just let you end the show on all this Green Bay stuff. So then Rashad Bateman goes to the Baltimore Ravens at 27. Love it. Big first.
And they got an edge a couple picks later.
Yep. Absolutely.
So those 2 picks for them they needed an edge because they lost Judon, and they also needed a wide receiver. So they kind of nailed it there.
Stole it. Saints take Peyton Turner next, DN out of Houston. Good pickup.
Right. I didn't like it that much. I think the Saints are kind of a weird team drafting because they were so good in 2016, had such a great draft that year, propelled them to almost making a Super Bowl. Since then, I don't think they've drafted good. I don't think they're very good drafters. They just hit gold one year. And I think they really reached for that. So I don't love it, actually.
Fair enough. We are skipping pick number 29. Number 30, Buffalo Bills took Gregory Rousseau, I think is how you say that. Miami D-end. I think they're just building in the trenches. They come from a long line of Andy Reid building the trenches type.
I think they had an okay draft. Not bad, not
solid.
Insane. Yeah. Then
the Ravens touched on them, taking the D-end, and then ended the night D-end at a Washington. Joe Tyron for Tampa Bay. Rich just get pick. Richer there. Fine.
Yeah, they got Trask later on. I think that was a good pickup because he's barely played any football. He's played a year and a half. He never played in high school. He was never the starter in high school, and he played a year and a half at Florida. And some of the throws he was making were really high level. So if he learns behind Tom, they could legitimately have their next guy, which is scary. But we'll see how that goes.
So pick number 29, Green Bay Packers take Eric Stokes, cornerback out of Georgia. They didn't take a wide receiver until round 3 with Amari Rodgers.
Yeah, traded up for Amari Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers news comes out the day of the draft that he has told some in the organization that he wants Audi 5. He wants Audi 500, Audi 5000, Audi 5 million. a lot of reports came after that. Ian Rappaport, Shefty, all of them coming out saying, hey, this is about contract talks. The owner, coach, and GM all just went to visit many times during this offseason to just talk to Aaron Rodgers. A lot of reports that this is really just about contract, that he wants guaranteed money. He's not guaranteed any money right now. And that he wants a long-term extension.
And today, some different reports came out with AJ Hawk.
I missed that. What happened?
Yeah, so AJ Hawk came out, and because obviously AJ was hanging out with him.
Is this
at the Kentucky Derby last week? Sorry, what was that?
Is this all the stuff about Kumaro?
Yeah.
Go ahead, continue.
And so basically, AJ said he doesn't think Aaron's going to retire, and he said, I don't know how explicitly they talk. Like, I don't know if AJ was like, "Are you going to retire? Why are you doing this? Why is that?" I think it was more kind of casual talking. Everyone knows what was going on, and I think he just said that he thinks it's not a contract issue. He doesn't think, because I think they can get that worked out. That, you know, contracts always start out a little tough, and you get it worked out. Dak Prescott, he got it worked out. Russell Wilson, got it worked out a couple of days. They always get it worked out, you know. Unless you're a running back, then you get cut and you make less money. But it's mainly been, I think it started in 2017. Brian Gutekunst gets hired, cuts Jordy Nelson, and they fire his QB coach, and they sign Jimmy Graham and Muhammad Wilkerson. Just like doesn't really make a lot of sense, and doesn't tell Aaron. You know, they draft quarterback. They don't tell Aaron. Aaron publicly talks about how he's excited to be throwing the ball to Jake Kumaro. The next day they cut him. And so, you know, just a lot of things like that, where it's like, almost feels like out of spite, like, oh, you were talking about how much you like throwing to this receiver. And there's, you know, people have been mixed about, you know, but I think Aaron really thought Jake Kumaro should be getting more playing time. He thought Jake Kumaro should be like the third receiver on their team. And then they cut him the next day. You know, so I think it's been an accumulation of a lot of things of the Packers just not treating Aaron well, not treating their best player well. It doesn't make sense. You don't need to give him the keys to the car, but just let you know where that you're going, you know, right? Like, don't keep him completely out of the loop, you know, especially when there are things that impact him. When you're firing the QB coach that he's had for 10 years, that he's played at the highest level with, when you fire him without telling him, that's going to piss a guy off, especially when he's so good and he deserves to be treated differently. Peyton Manning would never have been treated like that. Tom Brady, I don't even think was treated like as badly, right? And so I think that's just got to be tough for him, and it's just annoying. And the thing I keep thinking about is like it shouldn't be hard to treat the most talented player in the history of your franchise well. Like, that shouldn't be like a hard thing to do, like to be in constant communication with your best player who impacts everything that you do. If Aaron Rodgers is hurt, you have no chance, right? Like, he is the franchise.
He's gotten hurt and they didn't have a chance.
And they didn't have a chance at all. The couple years he gets hurt, no chance. And then Aaron also, it's not like Aaron doesn't put his body on the line. We saw that in 2018 when apparently he was playing for a coach that he didn't like, and Mike McCarthy. They had just fired his quarterback coach. They had also just cut Jordy Nelson. In the first game of that year, he could have easily taken a month and a half off with that knee injury. We know Kawhi Leonard would have taken 3 years off with something like that. And he was on the field later that game and led him to a win in 2018 against the Bears.
Yeah.
After they had done everything. So it's not like he's not committed to the team. It's not like he's not putting his body on the line. So it's pretty absurd. And so I think, just speaking on the situation, you know, I think there's a good chance that I don't think he retires. I think there's a chance we trade him this year. I think it's far more likely that they figure something out. He plays the year, then we trade him next offseason when the cap hit is a little bit less, and it's a little more doable. And then the Packers transition into a new period, and the Packers say, hey, we're going to go after it this year. And then next year it's going to be, you know, completely new.
You don't think he holds out?
I don't think so. Unless the reason he would, I think there's a lot of things that are at play here. I don't think it's impossible that the Packers, have to go to really extensive means. If they are really dead set on, if they are 100% we're not going to trade him, then he actually could end up staying there a few years longer, because they could go to an incredible amount of means to re-sign him to an extension, really put Jordan Love and really say, we just messed up that pick, but we got better with this draft. We're still a Super Bowl contender. We want you to finish your career here. Aaron might force them to do that. That, I think that's not something that people are talking about. But if they just say, "Hey, we are sorry that we didn't communicate with you enough." Also, the report AJ Hawk really put to rest that he says he does not think Aaron wants Brian Gutekunst fired. Actually, he said that is false. So we know who's putting that out there. We know the Packers are putting that out there. It's a really weird situation. Why is this getting leaked right now? Why are the Packers? It seems like the Packers are leaking this to me and not Aaron Rodgers. And it makes no sense, because the Packers are the people getting attacked. And the more they put out, the worse they look. I hope they reach an extension with him and then trade Jordan Love or something and move on to the future. But that seems unlikely. So we might have, I don't think he'll get traded. I still don't think he'll get traded this offseason. But it's definitely in play and very likely if he doesn't get an extension, even if he does play, he's gone next year.
Look,
even if he does play this year out.
I've been around quarterback craziness for 2 to 3 years. It feels like leaks happen, but you have to take them with a grain of salt, because you never really know what's accurate. I mean, the leaks back in the day that Wentz was bullying the coaches and doing all this stuff, and then you hear everything much later years. Now Doug's talked a little bit about it, and he's like, that is just not true at all. Like, you don't know. AJ Hawk went to the Derby. They were probably a few deep, and they were just sitting, watching and chatting like you do when you sit and you watch a game or a sporting event. And he probably just said to him straight up, Aaron, are you actually thinking of retiring? And Aaron, I'll tell you, I bet you Aaron Rodgers said no. I bet you even scoffed at it. And I hear this a lot from our resident Bear fan, but I also hear it on the media a lot, and I hear it a lot about how, Aaron Rodgers would retire out of spite. Aaron Rodgers would do this out of spite. He's very stubborn. Let me tell you what a stubborn guy Aaron Rodgers, what he would really do. What Aaron Rodgers would really do is not hold out in camp. He would go out and absolutely ball. He would win another MVP at his age, a legitimate deserving, not when Brady won it 3 years ago, when he didn't deserve it, when he wasn't that great, when it should have gone to Carson Wentz. Rodgers will go out and he will dominate, and he'll win with nobodies, and he'll keep doing that. And then he'll say, all right, go ahead and trade me. My value is going to be huge. Look how good I am, and you're giving me up for a guy you have no clue how good he's going to be, really. And then he's going to go win rings somewhere else with a great roster if that happens. I don't think Aaron gets traded. He's not going to retire to go host Jeopardy. I know he said once it'd be a dream to host Jeopardy. I have a million dreams. Some of them I don't need to come true. I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to host. If he retires, he loses like $23 million over 2 years. You're not losing $23 million to go make Jeopardy money. And Jeopardy money is pretty nice, but it's not $23 million. It's not $23 million. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he does want Gutekunst fired necessarily. I think that conversation also hit this very similar. I think AJ said, are you really trying to force Gunt out? And he's like, no, man, like I respect him. I like him, this and that. I do think he's made some bad decisions. We agreed, disagree. I'd be okay if they moved on, but I have a lot of respect for him. I think that's Aaron has shown. I've watched enough Aaron Rodgers interviews to know he's actually pretty much a class act. He'll speak his mind though. He'll speak his mind. And that's okay. He doesn't roll over.
There's the narrative of people who've tried to tear down Aaron Rodgers that was running rampant really up to 2018 and 2019 last year, when people thought him and Matt LaFleur weren't getting along. And then Aaron turned that thing around last year, and everyone was like, Aaron is just like, everyone would be mad if their replacement got drafted. Andy Dalton is mad that the Bears drafted Justin Fields, and they told Andy Dalton that they were going to draft him before they did, and they didn't tell Aaron Rodgers they were going to draft him. The
We
people who
even
are
told
really
Wentz
hating on Aaron,
or
saying
Hurts.
that he's so spiteful and this is, so much his fault. Like, yeah, maybe some of it could be his fault, but they're just people who are out here to attack Aaron. They're people who don't like the Packers being successful. But I don't blame him for wanting to go somewhere else when the franchise has treated him like this. It is odd how it's unfolded, and hopefully this is just a leverage play to get a nice contract extension, and hopefully that extension happens and he plays for us for another handful of years, because if we lose Aaron, we also lose Davante Adams next offseason, because I do not think he's going to re-sign to play with Jordan Love, which means not only are you losing maybe the best a top 2 quarterback in the NFL, but you're losing maybe the best wide receiver in the NFL in the same offseason. So that would be really, really difficult and tough to swallow and put the Packers in a really bad position. So I'm hoping he stays. I'm pretty mixed. I'm guessing he's going to be gone next offseason. I'm still of the same mindset that I have been, that he'll play out this year. Davante Adams is on the last year of his contract. They're gonna go for it. Try to win another Super Bowl. Hopefully he wins one, and then we trade him, and we're bad for 10 years or whatever, and he goes on to do great things. Or you're
just elite, and you just continue this trend of just having great quarterbacks. Jury's still out on Jordan Love.
And so we'll get to my draft real quick after this. But yes, I still think the most likely outcome is he's traded next.
Imagine he goes to Denver. Jordan Love ends up being a stud, and you meet in the Super Bowl. Be absolute chaos.
Well, that would be insane.
Yeah, but let's touch on your draft real quick, because we got to wrap this show up.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's kind of the exact opposite of last year's draft. For last year's draft, the positionally they drafted so poorly, drafting quarterback when you have elite quarterback, drafting a running back when you have an elite running back for multiple years, drafting a tight end when you re-sign 2 tight ends in the offseason this year. Didn't matter how good the talent was. Didn't matter how good Jordan Love was. It didn't make sense. Doesn't matter how good AJ Dillon is. He's not going to see the field behind Aaron Jones very much. This draft is a little bit different, where they completely nailed every position. Cornerback, big position. They got 2 corners. Went after offensive line. Finally got a receiver. Still got a defensive
lineman. That lineman you got.
Linebacker. Yeah, me too. However, they did reach quite a bit for a lot of their picks. And it starts right with Eric Stokes. Most people had him as a late 2nd, early 3rd round draft pick. Packers reached to get him at 29, especially with Asante Samuel on the board, who I think is definitely a better prospect. I understand why they fell in love with him. He is the fastest defensive back in the draft. Ran a 4.2 5.40. He is so fast, and he does not going to give up big plays. So I can see the fit there. He's not going to give up the Scotty Miller touchdown. And the Packers defensive backs with Jair Alexander and Darnell Savage, ton of speed back there. They should not be giving up very many over the top bombs, but fundamentally Eric Stokes, a little bit to be lacking. So he's a little bit of a boomer bust pick. That's why a lot of people had him in the 2nd round, where it's like, he is ton of talent, ton of athleticism, but his footwork just isn't there. He competed against a lot of good receivers and kind of got a mixed bag. Competed against Alabama, competed against Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, all those guys. So kind of a mixed bag. It's right at the right position. They reached for him a little bit, but you know what? He could definitely turn out to be a stud at corner, and it makes a lot of sense to go after cornerback. You're gonna have to pay Jair Alexander a ton of money, and it's a really important position, especially in in the league right now. Overall, I give the Packers draft grade probably a C+ to a B-, just because they had to reach so much. Same with the center that they got. He could end up being really good, but they definitely reached a little bit to get him. But the pick I do love Amari Rodgers. A lot of people have talked about it. They feel like he's Randall Cobb 2.0.
I think he's better than Randall Cobb coming out.
Yeah, the only thing that he's the second best behind your boy Devontae Smith, yards after the catch at wide receiver, he has more yards after the catch, more than Jamar Chase, more than Jalen Waddle, more than Bateman, more than the Moores. So he is going to be perfect for that. And hopefully we're able to keep Davante Adams, because he feels like the perfect complement to Davante Adams and MVS. Because MVS, your traditional deep threat. You got Davante Adams, the do-it-all guy. Alan Lazard, kind of a possession guy, and then you got a slot receiver in Amari Rogers, who has really good hands. The only thing is his route tree is a little limited, so we need to see if he can develop that, and then he'll really take off if that happens. But no, I love that pick, and that's the only pick they got really great value out of. I think he could have gone in the second round, and he went in the third round because some other receivers dropped a little bit. So yeah, overall, I think they drafted positionally what we need, but they just had a lot of reaches. But who knows? We think a lot of reaches end up happening, and then 2 years from now, maybe they'll pan out and Eric Stokes will be the best corner in the draft somehow, and he'll really figure it out. And, it'll have ended up being a steal. But for right now, I think they reached a little bit, but thank God they drafted positionally and didn't take another quarterback, running back, tight end in their first 3 picks.
I agree with you on the score. I think it's a C+ with the potential to be a B-, B, depending. But yeah, I thought it worked. Anything else? We should probably wrap the show up.
Yeah, Packers will be really interesting. I do think, as long as Aaron Rodgers stays, I do think the draft, unlike last year, which impossibly we just stayed the exact same, I do think we got better with this draft. I like a handful of picks, which is something that if it would have happened last year, maybe we would have a Super Bowl ring right now. But let's just hope the Packers can keep Aaron.
Well, we'll see. All right, guys, for the Get Back guys, we're getting out of here. Do all the stuff, like, comments, share, check us out everywhere. Nice having some good football stuff to talk about before another dry season hits. NBA playoffs so heating up, so that'll be fun. Yep. All right. Fly, Eagles, fly. We're out of here.
See ya.